Bang Xiao heads up the ABC's Chinese team, and he joins me now in the studio. Bang, really good to have you with us. Obviously, a very big announcement, especially for the lobster trade. But given that the Prime Minister made this announcement at the ASEAN summit in Laos, how big a diplomatic announcement was this? What's the significance of that?
I think the significance of today's announcements marks the ending of the trade war between China and Australia. Apparently, this is a huge announcement for farmers and the fishing sectors in Australia, but also probably for the Australian consumers. That means after the end of this year, the price of lobster could go up, given that it's going to be the Chinese Lunar New Year soon, and Chinese consumers, given even that the economy is still kind of like in a very worrisome situation, but people will still go out and enjoy a really nice Lunar New Year meal. But taking into consideration that the lobster industry has contributed to almost $700 million back in 2019 before the trade war started, this is a huge and lucrative business for Australia. And apparently, lobster, the meaning of its Chinese name means dragon and prawn. So there is a really lucky definition and implication in its name. So it will be celebrated.
Okay, hopefully lucky for everyone, but get your lobsters now before the prices go up. That's a message
before Christmas
from you, Bang, before Christmas. Okay,
yeah.
But how much will it actually boost the lobster trade, though? Will it go back to the levels of the pre-bans for Australian producers?
This is still unpredictable. My thinking about this is that we'll see a very short period of time where the sales of lobster will be boosted, given that right after the lift of the ban, it could be the Chinese Lunar New Year, where people will spend lots of money on the delicacy that they usually don't enjoy or don't have a chance to have. But given that the Chinese economy is currently in a dire situation where public servants and people in general are facing a pay cut in the country, and at the same time, the property market and the stock market is still seeing a very interesting dynamic right now. So it's very hard to say the Chinese market will respond to Australian live lobster in a very strengthful way.
Yeah, I don't think any potential Chinese stimulus would involve giving any rebates for lobsters. But the Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, he met with the Premier Li Qiang on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit. What else was on the agenda?
Something else is kind of like a regular, was mentioned on a regular basis. For example, the stability of South China Sea and a number of consular cases, including the most famous Dr. Yang Hengjun's case, given that he's an Australian citizen still being detained in China, and also apparently the peace and stability in the Taiwan Straits. And particularly on today, it's such a curiously coincidence that the announcement of this ban lifting stuff was happening on the 10th of October, which is also the National Day of the Republic of China, also known as Taiwan. So it's kind of interesting because it's such a competition for grabbing international attention on the same dates, whereas the Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te is also having a public speech.
Yes, on that note, on that public speech, I want to just play a little bit of what he had to say earlier today.
Of course.
身为总统，我的使命是维护。
As president, my mission is to ensure that our nation endures and progresses, and to unite the 23 million people of Taiwan. I will also uphold the commitment to resist annexation or encroachment upon our sovereignty.
Now, we will resist annexation. That is the message from him. But at the same time, he's also said that he wants to work with Beijing on issues like climate change. But overall, what did you make of his speech today?
His speech today is very different from his speech back in May, given that that was his inauguration speech. The message he delivered to the general public in Taiwan is that he wanted and committed to unite everybody, regardless of their political belief. Either they are pro-Beijing, pro-independence, or they are actually the moderate general public that is caught up in between the confrontation between Taipei and Beijing. He said, regardless you believe in Taiwan's term as in Taiwan, Republic of China, or Republic of Taiwan, we should be united. So the reason why it's different is very obvious, because as soon as he becomes the president, the role he plays is to make sure that the Taiwanese public could believe in his political mission and also be convinced that he's able to lead the island with leadership. And given that the situation in the Taiwanese parliament right now is very interesting, it's kind of like a first ever in the history that the opposition is having the majority seats in the parliament.
Yeah, so how difficult a balancing act is that for the new president to have that parliament where the opposition Kuomintang, the pro-China Kuomintang is dominating?
It's been always very difficult for them to balance it out, because whoever is on that position has to balance out the situation where sometimes they went too far or too aggressive for insisting that Taiwanese identity. Then the general public who is pro-China or pro the Republic of China identity will feel reluctant to vote for them. At the same time, if they are being reluctant to reinforce that Taiwanese identity, then Taiwan encounters such a awkward situation where they haven't officially claimed independence, but at the same time facing constant threats from China and the People's Liberation Army, will be having a doubt about whether this leader is strong enough to convince the public that he could defend Taiwan when the public needs him.
And also maybe to also convince the global, the international community, because you wrote today a piece on the ABC telling us that the global support for Taiwanese calls for sovereignty is waning. Why is that the case?
The global support for the Taiwanese independence or the sovereignty has been kind of in a very embarrassing situation where, every time when the Western democratic countries' leaders having a meeting with China, China always reinforces its one China principle, whereas Taiwan should not be taken into consideration as a political or diplomatic ally with a foreign country. But at the same time, when the Taiwanese government trying to make connection or establish a relationship with Western democracies, it's always very difficult even to secure a meeting in the diplomacy space. At the same time, I would say, given that in the past, every single time in the past 50 years, we've seen and heard people calling about the drumbeat of the war is actually happening. It's actually more beneficial for Western governments, whoever is delivering this message, winning more votes and having more budget into the military investments, and at the same time, media could get more clicks on that. But at the same time, if you listen to the general public in Taiwan, the majority of people are supporting status quo, and it's about 88%. It's a huge number.
That's a huge number, yeah.
And about 66% of the general public in Taiwan don't believe China would invade Taiwan in the next 5 years. There is such a huge disconnect between the Western perception on the status of the Taiwan Straits and what is really going on in the islands. So I think that's a very interesting situation that the world has to reflect on.
Okay, Bang Xiao, really good to get your analysis as always. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Girish.